Yesterday, Kevin Durant says he will not visit the White House if his NBA champion Warriors are invited. Quote, "I don't agree with what he agrees with, so my voice is going to be heard by not doing that. That's just me personally, but if I know my guys well enough, they'll all agree with me. It all comes from who is in the administration. It comes from the top. Leadership trickles down to the rest of us. If we have someone in office that doesn't care about all people, then we won't go anywhere as a country. In my opinion, until we get him out of here, we won't see any progress."
Time to welcome in ESPN The Magazine senior writer Howard Bryant for his perspective on the week that was. Howard, we begin with Kevin Durant. KD spoke to our Chris Haynes yesterday about last weekend's events in Charlottesville, calling them unfathomable, and said he would not visit the White House if invited. What was your take on his comments, Howard?
Well, my take on his comments is this is where we are, and I think that this is one of these examples where we talked about this yesterday with Cari Champion, that I don't think that whether you want to speak out or whether you don't, you're still part of this. You're part of this whether you say something, you're part of it whether you don't. And I think that, Linda, you know, we've been all in this business long enough that we've always said, well, we really don't like the canned quotes, and we really don't want these guys sitting on the sidelines, and we don't want them hiding behind their gated communities. Why don't they speak up? And now they're speaking up, and we want them to be quiet. I think that this is an example of the older generation when you talked about where were you during your time. And we're going to remember these players for what they did, and we're also going to remember the ones who didn't say anything.
It's a good point. It really depends how old you are on how you're dealing with what's going on right now and how the players, some of the players, are reacting. Now, Durant talked about the importance of growing up in a community where everyone banded together, Howard. He said there are many athletes who don't speak publicly but are doing a lot in their communities. So if athletes are working to give back in their communities, should they also be expected to speak out publicly, be expected to?
Well, yes, and I think they should, and unfortunately, once again, this is the responsibility that African American athletes have more than the others, and there's no question about that simply because of our history. It's not an example of whether or not you choose to speak out or whether you don't. In a lot of ways, the black athlete owes to the movement because the movement is what allowed us to get on the field in the first place. It's not like it is with other races, and so you may not want to be part of it. It may not be exactly who you are, but your history creates for you a certain responsibility, a certain heritage, a certain inheritance that you should want to be a part of. That doesn't mean that you have to act the way Muhammad Ali acted if you don't have his personality. I mean, who did? But it does mean that you can't simply say, hey, it's not my thing. You owe because you received.
Philadelphia Eagle Chris Long has said he would never kneel for the national anthem, but he has spoken up on social issues. And last night he stood next to his teammate Malcolm Jenkins, whose fist was raised during the anthem in a show of support. Long, who is from Charlottesville, said he wanted to show support as a white athlete. What was your take on this?
Well, my take on that is that you need allies. You need allies across all different platforms and all different beliefs and all different politics, because do we have a common identity? And if we do have a common identity, if we say we do, then these are not controversial issues. I'm not sure I would ever kneel for the national anthem, but this is not about the national anthem. This is about the issues that the national anthem represents. It's about the ideals of who we are. And if we focus on the national anthem as if one group doesn't respect it and one group does, or one group is more patriotic than the other, then I think this whole thing falls apart and we contribute to the misdirection of what this is really all about. This is about one group of people, or many groups of people, looking at our country as where we are right now and saying, look, we're not happy with where we should be. We need to be in a better place. And I think that when you look at guys like Greg Popovich, when you look at Steve Kerr, Stan Van Gundy, Chris Long, you need allies across the board, just like when you have men at the Women's March. Are we in this together or are we not? And I think that's the referendum that we're faced with right now.
Howard, on another note, Red Sox principal owner John Henry telling the Boston Herald he is in favor of changing the name Yawkey Way, which is a public street right outside of Fenway, because of the racist era it represents. Tom Yawkey, of course, back in the day was the principal owner of the Red Sox, had a chance to sign Jackie Robinson 2 years before the Dodgers did not. The Red Sox were the last Major League Baseball team to integrate. Would changes like that, changing the name of Yawkey Way, help provide healing?
Well, this is something, well, it depends on who's doing the healing. I think that this is an issue, if you're a true Bostonian or if you were born there like I was, this is an issue that's been going on for decades. This is nothing new. This really has nothing to do with Charlottesville or anything else. It has to do with Tom Yawkey and the history of the Red Sox. And the Red Sox weren't just the last team to integrate. They didn't sign a black free agent until 1992, so there's a lot of history there. I don't know how I feel about name changes and all of these things, but I do know this. This is an issue that's been going on for about 30 years, 35 years in Boston, and I think that if John Henry feels like this is a step that they need to take to create a new history, it is a monumental historic step in the city of Boston, especially when you look at everywhere you go in Boston, the Yawkeys gave money to something. That name is all over that city.
Yeah, that's right. That cannot be forgotten as well. It's definitely a developing story. Howard Bryan, appreciate your take on all of these issues that are affecting our country right now and sports.